Well, welcome back to another episode of Tip of the Tongue Business Series. I'm absolutely delighted to speaking to one of our collaborative partners today, Linda Petrovsky, who runs Global Partnerships. They're a global executive search company and very experienced in helping people through transition and change on the practical side of changing their roles. But Linda is also a qualified clinical psychologist, so is able to access and offer full support in that emotional and mental state of making those changes as well. So delighted to be speaking with Linda today. So much knowledge that very happy you're to share with us, Linda,
Thank you.
around how people are coping right now, what sort of things they should be considering. And I just would really like to get your feedback because I think it's a massive thing for people. We know that everybody handles change differently.
Mhm.
So what are the things that we need to be thinking about? And firstly, what are the signs, what are the indications that we might be feeling right now that would give us some sort of idea that we're not really coping?
Thank you so much, Shan. I'm delighted to be here. Well, I think perhaps the first thing that we might look at is that typically we get some sort of signal, or our body can actually indicate a physical symptom. So sometimes you might feel the tension in the shoulders, you might get the knot in the stomach, the sweaty palms, and then that might exacerbate to really sort of having difficulty in breathing. So I guess you've really got to listen to your body first. When you feel, and it's been over an extended period of time, that there are emotions that are surfacing, or you're starting to feel a bit teary, and that's ongoing, or in fact the opposite, escalating to anger really quickly, or feeling, overwhelmed, it's almost an indicator that something's not quite right. You're perhaps out of kilter. Maybe there's some issues at work or in the family environment or in a relationship. And I guess with COVID-19, there clearly people have experienced hardships, or maybe loss of job or some financial hardships. But I guess I sort of sense that these feelings might have been brewing for a period of time, and then there's an escalation point, and I guess it's a matter then of sort of determining what's next and maybe seeking some support and professional help. So they're just some indicators that you need to just be aware of when you're, noticing what's happening with you on a day-to-day, weekly, monthly, and then sometimes it extends for a quarter, and then we need to intervene.
And I love that you say it's about noticing what's going on for yourself right now, because I know I'm very good at saying there's nothing wrong with me, I'm fine. And I think
Yes.
it's something we do as a bit of a habit. And it is about changing that habit, isn't it? And actually looking
Yes.
at recognizing what's going on for us, and why that might be something that we should be investigating further for our own sake and our own health and well-being. I think you're
Absolutely.
very good at taking care of everybody else. And I love the analogy that I'm hearing a lot at the moment, which is that plane analogy, which is around making sure you put your own oxygen mask on before you put somebody else's on. So yeah, it is about that self-care. Thank you. I love
Mm,
that. I
mm.
understand there are emotional management techniques. Are there any in particular? Can you explain what an emotional management technique is? And
Yes.
then is it
Sorry.
possible to understand how we would start to use those?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think the first thing is, we're all interconnected. Our mind and our thoughts impact an emotion and impact a behavior. So that's classical, it's called cognitive behavior therapy. But being able to ask yourself first what's in your control, and having some sense of understanding that, and then what's beyond your control. And I guess having the wisdom to determine what's one or the other is probably the first process in trying to just use the thoughts to be able to then move towards emotional management strategies. And look, there's been a lot of good work that's has been published about the importance of regulating your emotions. So you might have heard terms like self-regulation, being able to descale situations where you might be really upset or angry. And an emotional management technique is really about trying to harness the emotion if it's very elevated, such as anger, um, and be able to bring yourself down with a calming technique. And so, reflective thinking and reflection is important in terms of being able to harness the thoughts. Then it's about processing. So emotional management can also be about using talking therapies, which obviously, whether it's in a coaching scenario, whether you're working with a mentor or with a psychologist, emotions don't like to be avoided. So it's a bit like a stone that is in your shoe. Every time you avoid an emotion, it hurts because it kind of really, it feels uncomfortable and painful. So the management and the processing, you may not always have a solution, but it's about trying to raise the awareness and then trying to be able to work with labeling what is the emotion and understanding that. And then, there are lots of ways that we can look at from a mindfulness approach, which we can sort of get into, but you have to be able to harness and label the emotion to be able to then work with a technique to mitigate it or to manage it or to resolve it or to even understand it, and then to talk about it and work with whoever you're inclined to do that, whether it's a partner, a professional, or a coach.
I love that, Linda. Thank you. I was just going to move on to that whole kind of mindfulness approach. I think that's not necessarily an area that a lot of us are familiar with, but it seems to be a word more that I'm hearing now as acceptable in society. Could you give us an understanding of what mindfulness means and what the benefits are to somebody who embraces that as a technique?
Sure. No, absolutely, Sharon. There's been so much literature of recent times about what is mindfulness, being mindful, being in a mindful state. And we've probably all been doing it to some extent without really understanding what it is, really. But I think a mindful state is really achieved by being able to focus on raising awareness and trying to be what they call present in the moment, or in the flow is another term in the corporate arena, but it's about acknowledging and accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and then the bodily sensations, and using that as almost a therapeutic model. There are certainly there's the benefits of mindfulness and meditation are endless, but mindful states can actually participate. You can do that in daily life. So you can eat mindfully, you can walk mindfully, noticing things, looking at the sky, smelling the roses versus pounding the pavement and really sort of cycling all the thoughts. It's about trying to anchor. So I like using that word anchor, but even the breath is a really important part of mindfulness, because there's been a lot of research and scientifically proven research that our breath connects our mind and our body. And if we slow down our breath, we actually slow down the central nervous system. So it does decrease anxiety. And, you hear people saying meditation is so beneficial. Actually, it is, because you're trying to just focus on the world of your inner being versus the world of external things. And we all do that. We're worrying about our to-do list, kids, family, work commitments, and so forth. So I think meditating and being able to be in that state of, 5 minutes is better than nothing. 10 minutes is always going to be better than 5. 20 minutes is an optimal ideal time frame of being able to raise awareness and just slow things down and using the breath. So it's really important to find what is your mindful activity. Some people like to knit. Other people are very mindful in terms of the enjoyment from walking or swimming or gardening, but meditation has been proven to be a great strategy, and the breath is really well versed in terms of slowing things down. And I think there's lots of apps these days with Smiley Mind, and we're familiar with them. You can download them, and a number of other apps that are very useful in that state.
That's fantastic, Linda. I didn't know about those apps. I think that's something that a lot of people would like to know about and look into. Thank you for sharing that.
Pleasure.
I guess for me, I'd like to know, one of the things I've struggled with over the years is living a bit inside my own head, and actually that talk that goes on inside my own head, and how to get myself from maybe feeling a bit down about something and going into a bit of a negative self-talk, that kind of spiral downwards, and how to actually stop and move myself forward into be able to be fairly objective about what's happened and create a positive situation from what I might originally have conceived as a negative one. Do you have any frameworks or ways that you use to help people reframe that thinking when they feel they're going that way and they know they suddenly become aware of it? How would you advise somebody to step away from that?
I think the first thing is to try and see if we can capture what is the thought or the recurring thoughts, and perhaps the deeper form of processing is just grab a book or, some people like a journal and try and capture what are the recurring thoughts. We all have them, I guess, without going into too much of the psychology, depending on socialization, environment, upbringing. Sometimes when you're in a stressful situation, automatic thoughts just come up. And with work and being able to raise awareness, I think the first thing is try and write down what is that's recurring. That's the first thing. Notice what the thought is. So keeping a logbook would be handy. And then once again, like if you're working with a professional or a coach, there's lots of techniques of what we call reframing, because we all have a different perception, and the way I might perceive a situation is going to be very different to the way that you perceive or a colleague perceives a situation. So there's probably about 12 distorted cognitive thoughts. Some people can start, when you were talking a little bit about catastrophizing or worrying or extreme thinking. And I guess one of the techniques that might be useful is that for every one concern or worrying thought, the brain actually has to have 3 facts they have to be deemed positive, but they've got to be factual and real to reframe and rebalance. So once you start, you're concerned about something, or I'm not going to get this deadline met, or my work's not good enough, the brain just keeps latching onto those thoughts. So it's useful to actually be able to even say something like, stop thought, have an elastic band on your wrist, flick that elastic band, imagine a stop sign, and then I'm now going to think about this, or now I'm going to work on other activities. So that's a distractive measure that you can use to reframe the thinking. But it's interesting because there's been a lot of work on cognitive behavior therapy and the power of the thought, how your thoughts elicit an emotion and evoke a behavior. So we're trying to really understand, what are these thoughts, and is it a deep-seated belief that we need to challenge? Is it something about an irrational belief, again, that we just need to sort of pick and just work with and uncover? So you can start to really see what's happening. How can I just be able to work with myself in a way and be kinder to myself?
Yeah. No, I love that. I think it's, as we were saying before, I think we often put ourselves at the bottom of the list and we take care of everybody else first. As business owners, as mothers, fathers, there's always somebody else that we feel gets our attention before us. And actually, I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned over life is that if you don't take care of yourself, then actually you end up as less use to another person.
Absolutely.
And also being able to acknowledge that you're not coping right now, and you do need to look at what that's about to allow you to get back to being the best version of yourself. So I think those sort of reframings around and understanding what that needs to look like for yourself. I love that you say, how everybody's perspective actually affects how we go through that process. And understanding that that's not a negative thing, that's actually a positive thing, because you bring that unique value, that unique perspective to the process, so only you know how that process needs to work for you. I think that's a really valuable point moving forward. Linda, if I could just throw at you another little question around, I know you run your own business. Are there any things that you would be advising business owners right now to just be doing to take care of themselves?
Yeah, look, I think everyone's experienced sort of hardship in one way. I think it's a good time to reflect. Reflection is a really good strategy to really sort of take stock of what's important and what matters. Of course, family being priority and good health. But I think acknowledging that there are some really good business owners around, and that relationships are currency, and trying to whether it's recreate or just augment those relationships and focus on what you really do well is really important. We're all so hard on ourselves, of course, and especially if you're, an income earner and providing income and employment for a lot of staff as well, so as you say, we've got to keep looking after ourselves to be able to be effective and useful and valuable for other people. But I break it down. I think business owners need to keep reminding ourselves, we all do, that you've got to worry about what's in front of you for that 1 hour, that 1 day, that 1 week, instead of us sort of racing down to the next 6 months and being very concerned about not being able to either provide or sustain. Go back to the essentials. It will come back, but it'll be probably in a very different way or fashion as life as we know it, with COVID and the likes. But hopefully there's been some more silver lining in some of these incidents as well.
I love that. I think I totally agree with that. You can only make the decision based on the information you've got in front of you right now, which is why we love delivering the Tip of the Tongue business series, because it's about keeping people informed, keeping them up to date, keeping them interacting and connecting and communicating. So, Linda, thank you so much for your time. I'm sure you must be very busy with your clients right now. What's the best way, if anybody's got concerns right now and would like some extra support, what would be the best way for them to connect with you right now?
Sure, thank you, Sharon. Well, I'd welcome anyone to either call on my mobile, which I'm happy to offer that. So that's 0412943171, or by email, linda@globalpartnerships.com.au. We're an alliance partner, so any other sort of way would be also well received as well. So hopefully that helps.
No, that's great. Linda, thank you so much for your time. I think there are a lot of people that will take a lot from that. Hopefully opportunities to consider their self-care as business owners or in whatever role right now they know they need to be focusing on. And yes, we'll make sure that you'll see it on our Tip of the Tongue business page. So we'll make sure that all the contact information is there to make sure that people can get in touch with you and get the support they need right now. But we thank you very, very much for your time, because I'm sure you must have a lot of people that are after that as well right now.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure talking to you. I could spend another couple of hours, but I know you're busy. So thank you very much, and we'll speak again soon.
Thanks, Sharon.